really want to think about how can I build up other revenue streams. In the early stages, it's not always about optimizing to make the most. You obviously need the money to invest in improving your setup and things like that, but be mindful of focusing too heavy on monetization in the beginning.
YouTuber income varies wildly. For a 1 million view video, the range of income for top creators varies from $3,400 to $40,000, which comes from pre-roll, banner, and mid-roll ads. What can I do to maximize my CPM or cost per thousand views, and what numbers do I need to hit on Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube to make $3,000 a month?
Yeah, it does. It varies so widely. It's funny because even like I've seen some TikToks and stuff that have blown up where it's like this channel that had like I don't even remember how many subscribers it was, but it was a relatively, I think it was around like 10,000 or something subscribers, but was making a couple $1,000s a month from it. And it was like just from ad revenue. And it was like, holy cow. But the type of content that she was creating was all around finance content. And so it depends on who's watching the content, how long they're actually watching it for. Are they sitting through the pre-roll, the mid-rolls? Are they clicking it? Like, because some of those ads and some of those things that go out to that general population have a higher CPM. CPM being how much you make estimated dollars per 1,000 views that something gets. So that could be extreme, like $10 or something. Or it can be much less. And that's only for people that actually watch the ads. There's also, of course, like YouTube Red, where people are going to be still getting some revenue from that directly from YouTube in that case, because that's people that are paying to not get ads. And then there's a whole lot of people that just use ad block, especially if they're watching on PC, although it's not quite as easy to do that on your phones, especially if it's directly in the app. But that's blocking off a whole bunch of revenue. So it's kind of like, what's your real CPM in terms of net, the people that aren't even watching the ads and whatever that might be. And often that's a couple bucks at the most.
To just ask the audience too is just, do you have a sense of how much, like, do you understand how much larger streamers make or how much larger YouTubers make? Like, do you have a feeling for that? Or do you just, you see some Forbes article and that's what your assumption is? Because it does, to your point, vary so wildly depending on content type and your audience.
Mm-hmm. The audience, the demographic, the age. Like I don't even know in particular what the CPM average is for some of the kids channels, although those have the gangbusters views. I'm talking about like you can't even it's like 50 million views a day, and for like top creators that can be like for an entire month. So some of it can just get very explosive, and it depends on what it is. Billions, some people in chat said. But yeah, I mean, it is becoming more and more viable for more people off of it, and that's where, especially like, oftentimes what I'll see even from videos where people break down all of their revenue and everything, oftentimes it's like half of the revenue is even coming from ad revenue, especially at the higher scale of things. And then the other half is coming through sponsorships, or maybe even less than half is coming through ads. And then the other half is coming through sponsorships, subscriptions, Patreons, other deals that they might be working on that's not so tied in with just even ads per se.
Yeah, I think the important thing is for any creator is that you've got diverse revenue streams. I mean, just look at when there was a lot of creators that were so YouTube heavy in the past and focused primarily on ad revenue, and then demonetization hit, and their monetization almost overnight was cut by like 80%, or even 100% in some cases, where it was just really poorly flagged. And that is a scary place to be. And I think just generally you want to make sure that you have diverse revenue. And that's the same for your stream. It's the same if you're a streamer on, Facebook or Twitch, is that you really want to think about how can I build up other revenue streams that are kind of consistent, reliable, so that you don't have these kind of big, spiky, lumpy revenue. You really want consistent over time. And the more diverse revenue streams you have, the easier it is to make that more consistent monthly.
Some people in the chat are asking, so they really don't have any clue at all. A really good tool that you can use is Social Blade is a website that shows you all of the daily views as well as subscriber gains that creators actually get. And on there, you can kind of, again, going back to this CPM of what I was talking about, this is the basis for how these ad platforms really work, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or whatever. And you can kind of see, well, what would a low scale of that be? Maybe like 50 cents per 1,000 views, to a higher end of that, which maybe is like $10 per 1,000 views. And you can see what the daily, in terms of the daily views or even the monthly views that somebody might get. And then you can kind of estimate from there. I typically would look, especially in the gaming category, probably on the lower half of that spectrum. I mean, and that's, you got to keep in mind too, like that's partially, like you might actually have a CPM of like $7, $8, but all of those, like that's, you're looking at all the views that come in. So it's not actually $7 or $8 per all of those views, because maybe half of those views are using ad blocks. So you can't really do that. So that's why I usually look at the bottom end, and I kind of always estimate it between like $1 to $3 for per thousand views of like the actual channel of what they get, and just look at things at the low end, because sometimes, especially if it's towards the end of the year, towards the holidays, or when there's really high demand for advertisers, or maybe towards the end of a quarter when companies, maybe big triple, or big mainstream companies, Starbucks, Home Depot, whatever, maybe they got some more ad spend to roll out. Maybe they're trying to do a push at the end, so demand is going up for some of those ads, and that's where the prices of those can go up as well. But that's kind of like a good general way to look at it. And if you want to look at least on YouTube, to see some of the ballpark picture of where different creators are coming in at. But it really comes down to, doesn't matter if you're getting a whole bunch of subscribers every single day. If that view count is low, that's where everything is coming in through. It's through the views. And if you really want to maximize it as well, it comes down to putting more ads, right? If you can do 2 ads, if you can throw 2 pre-rolls in a video rather than just one, you could double your revenue off of it. And that's what we saw as pre-rolls were first even rolled out in the first place.
I think there is a toss up on that. Is like, as you know, how much do you need that revenue? And there's a balance there, because the more
Absolutely.
ads you run, people are gonna bounce off. So like, you really want to think about, do I need the revenue from this specific channel? So like, say your YouTube, you consider that a channel, your Twitch is like another channel. So do I need this revenue from my YouTube channel, or do I just want to focus on growing it and getting the audience bigger? And the less ads you run, it will probably monetize better, it will grow faster the less ads you run. At a certain point, you want to make sure you're turning on that monetization, because then you can start to justify getting support in. So like getting some editing support to help, and the actual revenue will offset the cost. But be mindful of that. In the early stages, it's not always about optimizing to make the most. You obviously need the money to invest in improving your setup and things like that. But be mindful of focusing too heavy on monetization in the beginning.
I remember for at least a year, I don't even remember the exact time. It was so many years ago now, but I would just get like, I had like pre-roll ads that I'd put on videos. And at that time, it was just a flat $2 CPM per 1,000 views that came in. And that was like pretty good. And so, but I was making, I'd get like, so, and this is also why you always hear me talking about, especially when it comes to YouTube, like, you got to be consistent. You want to upload a lot of content. If you can do like 2 or 3 things even a week is great, because that can be more views, more potential pre-rolls, even if they don't watch the whole thing, just kind of see the beginning of it. But, I made like 20, $30 a month off of it. And I was like, all right, here we go. And then you kind of figure out more as you start to do it as well. But then even just turning on a couple pre-rolls on it, even if it was just one, became very beneficial. And then some creators, like even if you look at Asmongold, for example, he's got kind of his main channel. He's got a kind of more personal channel where he just talks about general whatever. It's just kind of him. It's not even necessarily gameplay. It's him having a commentary and a conversation with an audience, and it does extremely well. And one of the things that he talks about on that is that I don't do any ads on this channel. There's no ads at all, no pre-rolls, no nothing. He's got everything turned off, although I think YouTube still might serve up some occasionally, but it's not necessarily something that he's massively pushing. And he was even saying, he's a bit concerned. Maybe it's not hitting some of the algorithms because it's not actually going to obviously make YouTube even revenue off of it. So at that point, maybe you should turn it on or do a couple more. So it does make sense to optimize around it, or at least have something. But to the sake of, especially early on, like, you don't want to be turning people away from your content because of how many ads are on it, especially if they don't have YouTube Red or whatever way to stop some of the ads. It's the same thing true even if you have the ability to run ads on Twitch, right? Like if you're constantly rolling mid-roll ads on people, then it's just another opportunity for people to click away. You kind of want to build that base up and almost hit a critical mass